Hello, I'm Thomas Ayer, Chief Content Officer of the Performance Driven Marketing Institute, a not-for-profit trade association that serves companies in the performance and direct-to-consumer marketing world. Welcome to the first event in our winter seminar series created by the PDMI's Workshop Council, titled Insurance Lead Gen Performance Marketing. We welcome all of you to today's event, both PDMI members and non-members alike. Speaking of membership, if you're not a PDMI member but are attending today, we'd love to have you consider joining. There's no better way to support the mission of the PDMI than joining and sharing your voice in the direction of the industry. In the handouts tab of your control panel, you'll find our PDMI membership brochure. I urge you to download it, flip through it, and contact any of our team members should you desire more information. One more thing before we get to today's conversation, the group will be addressing any questions from the audience at the end of the session, but you don't have to wait to ask them. Utilize the questions tab on your control panel to type in and send your question to us. We'll be collecting them and we'll try to get to as many as possible in the final moments of the webinar. Today, the PDMI's Workshop Council welcomes this quartet of experts in performance and direct-to-consumer marketing and the insurance space to its virtual stage. No matter the sector, life, Medicare, supplemental, and more, the insurance industry has long relied on the tenets of performance marketing to reach new customers and build relationships with current ones. The leaders you see here today are set to discuss topics including key consumer touchpoints, messaging that works, the importance of competitive analysis, TV creative tips, and more. I'm thrilled to welcome Fern Lee, CEO of New York's THOR Associates, and a member of our e-commerce council at the PDMI. She's your moderator, and our other esteemed speakers, welcome to you as well. Fern, take it away.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it. Thank you all for joining the PDMI webinar today, Insurance Lead Gen Performance Marketing. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Fern Lee. I'm the CEO of THOR Associates, a strategic marketing agency tasked with delivering transactional revenue either by calling an 800 number or ordering a product or service online. I've been a direct marketer for over 35 years, having been inducted into Direct Response Hall of Fame in 2018. I'm honored today to introduce our panelists. These women are going to share incredible insights regarding insurance lead gen marketing and explore how performance rests its laurels on consumer touchpoints, marketing strategy, and competitive analysis. So let's jump and let me introduce the panelists. First, we'll go with Danira Barrero.
Hi, I'm Danira Barrero. I'm the COO of OmniDirect. We're a performance-based marketing and media firm. We specialize in the Hispanic market. We're based out of Miami. We've been established for over 20 years and we have experience across categories. But in recent years, we have a particularly heavy focus on lead gen and financial services, especially the insurance area. I'm also the managing director of Anhelo Salud. It's a company that was recently launched in 2021. We specifically focus on targeting Latino seniors for helping them with the Medicare Advantage options via various carriers.
Fantastic. And Karen Kluger?
Hi, everybody. Karen Kluger. I am the founder and CEO of Touchpoint Integrated Communications out of Darien, Connecticut. We are a fully integrated digital and traditional media planning, buying, and optimization agency. Our focus is on delivering channel-agnostic media programs powered by channel experts, data, and intuitive minds that allow us to keep all of our clients on the cutting edge and ahead of their competitors. I've been in the media industry for, almost 30, 35 years right there with Fern, and have merged brand building and transactional goals to ensure that our practice delivers simultaneously against both. I'm honored to be a part of this panel, and thank you very much, Fern, for including me.
And then we have, last but not least, Phyllis Philipstein.
Hi, thank you for having me. I am a senior director today managing the life business for Transact. I started in this business like these ladies about 34 years ago as an assistant at Katz Communications while I was in college. I got my finance degree from Villanova and couldn't wait to get a real job, but alas, was back in advertising 6 months later, eventually earning my MBA from Penn State, working full-time with 2 children under the age of 3. So it really set me up for success in this industry. I've been on both the client and agency side, cutting my teeth on infomercials with the Great American Telecast. I spent years working with some of the most talented and storied celebrities, from Richard Simmons to George Foreman, John Cleese, and my all-time favorite, Alex Trebek. It's been a wild and crazy ride from infomercials to performance-based marketing with everything in between. So I wouldn't change it for the world, and I'm really honored to be here today and looking forward to the conversation.
And what Phyllis didn't tell you, everyone, is that she was, last 15 years before she went to Transact, she was at Colonial Penn. So that's her Alex Trebek story. So we'll hear more from her as we go forward. So the channel mix is vast, and the insurance category is crowded, competitive, and regulated, which makes for a perfect storm of challenges from a marketing lead gen perspective. Over $2.5 billion is spent yearly on linear TV. That doesn't even take into account digital, YouTube, direct mail, print, out-of-home, and CTV. So lean in and enjoy as our panelists are going to speak to their collective heritage of analyzing and acting on real-time data, which allows for quick pivots and a robust ROI. So Danielle, kick it off for us. From a marketing strategy, what is the key consumer channel to advertise for insurance?
So speaking to specifically D2C and advertising that has a call to action, I just want to caveat that because there are a lot of carriers out there that do brand-based marketing and long-term value type of marketing. But speaking, just from the D2C call to action world, I think TV is still the heavy hitter, right? The mix is changing a lot, but mostly I think the standards right now are TV with digital, direct mail, and digital being paid and unpaid, organic and paid, and some radio. At least that's where it is for most of my campaigns.
And so Karen Kluger, and is that because we're looking at older markets? So when we think of insurance, we think of life insurance, we think of Medicare Advantage, we think of MedSup. When we talk about the younger audiences, when we look at auto, we look at pet insurance, things that it could be different. But so what do you feel? Is it by genre, or is it really in totality an older marketplace?
Well, I think it is by genre, and I think that in the current marketplace and the current state of media, brands can't rely on just the one media channel. To your point, though, De Niro, TV definitely plays a huge role in the media mix, right? But we look at it more so from one media channel attacked for any category when trying to move a prospect through the consideration funnel, right? So especially for insurance and financial goods, all channels I think have to really work together to educate and engage and to move the consumer to select your brand. The insurance category is especially challenging, as we all know, because it is so crowded and competitive, not only with brands, but also with aggregators buying for new applicants and trying to entice the switchers. So I would say each channel has its strengths and its purposes in the decision-making process. And to your point, for TV, for example, TV will always drive awareness and volume, so we absolutely have to have that positively impacting all the other channels, especially search, social, and DM. So it's especially helpful if all the channels, as we always talk about, are planned, evaluated, and optimized holistically to ensure that the most effective and efficient buys are always, in market at any given time. And to your point, the media mix and weight for each channel really does depend on the desired target segment, whether it's the senior audience or the younger audience for car insurance. So, I think that's kind of how I think it's really imperative to look at the media mix by segment as well.
Oh, absolutely. The age of the target demographic obviously will determine the weight of the mix, mostly, in my opinion, more than anything.
Sure.
Absolutely.
But direct mail is still huge, and digital is growing quickly. And even in the TV side, linear versus non-linear, that mix is changing too. It's a moving target, I would say, even within the same demographic and the same genre.
Absolutely. Look at YouTube. I mean,
Right.
YouTube, we have the 25-year-olds cutting cords. They're doing YouTube, but they're giving it to their 65 and plus grandparents, aunt and uncles, and parents. So it's really, the funnel is opening very differently with YouTube coming on
Changing
board.
quickly and changing quickly. Yeah.
So Phyllis, how do you best gain trust from the consumers to drive conversion and persistency? And we could talk about the life business here. I mean, that's what your expertise is.
Absolutely. So trust is earned, right? There's a perceived brand credibility, which is just as valuable as what the street sees as that brand if it's a publicly traded company. So in other words, if you hide your Facebook comments, what does that say to your consumers? You need to think about all of these actions and outcomes as you try to develop your brand and get it into the market. It's important, your celebrity, your internal endorsers, right? 15 years at Colonial Penn, Alex Trebek, Jonathan Lawson is an agent. They bring additional credibility. The key is finding the right person for your product, for your target demographic. They build it inherently. And it's that if we all think about Alex Trebek and what he brought into our homes for so many years, he was with Colonial Penn almost 30 years. That consistency of messaging and his presence really adds to that value and trust from a consumer perspective. So how do you use that and extend that brand to improve your conversion and persistency? For final expense in particular, price and affordability is king, right? Share of wallet's really high on the list for this target demographic. And I think as we talk today, we'll really get into that target demographic as we talked about that media mix. It really drives that media mix, how you're generating those leads. So when you're trying to get them to stay on the books and convert and buy in the first place and then stay on the books, you need that consistent messaging, you need exceptional customer service, and you need a good value for the price that they're paying. So then they become your biggest fan. Referrals are very important. And then, you can use them potentially in your commercials for testimonials, things like that. The key is meeting them where they are. Do these customers prefer to be on the phone? Do they prefer to go online and shop? Do they prefer to do a combination of both? There's really a super important key in your marketing messaging and strategy is meeting that customer where they are, building that relationship. It's worth the effort. And then as you onboard those customers, what's that experience look like? Is there a good customer portal? Is there a good customer experience? Are you communicating with them? We'll touch on that later as we talk about nurturing, but I think that there's some things to talk about that really add to the value of not only conversion to get them to get on the books, but then keeping them on the books.
And so when I was at Life Direct, one of the things we saw with persistency, especially an average order value of the policies, the consumer who came in through digital versus TV was a stronger consumer. And do you think that's because they read and they knew exactly what they were getting rather than picking up and dialing an 800 number?
So I think, my experience has been on this final expense product that TV is really the driver. Those consumers that are going online are in the younger part of the demographic. So they're more versed on the online kind of experience, and they're not afraid to put their credit card in or make a transaction. I think that certainly you see it in the Medicare space, but you can read more, you can get more information, you can educate yourself, or your children or the prospect's children can educate themselves and have those conversations. So it's really we talk about omni-channel. Most people don't use it correctly. This group that's here today certainly knows, but that omni-channel marketing and consistent messaging across offline and online channels really will help that. But in this older demographic, TV is king and phone calls really matter because there's questions that really an agent can help them answer.
And one of the interesting things we've seen over the last 5 years where, 5 to 10 years ago, we were seeing people automatically have it deducted and coming out of their bank account. Now we're seeing credit card because of all the ancillary, gifts that they get, gifting, whether it's for, 2% back, whether it's because you get mileage for this or et cetera. So it's changed. Karen, anything to add here?
Yeah, no, I mean, Phyllis, I think has really, really hit it extremely well. I mean, I think the most important thing is to provide the positive user experience throughout the customer journey so that they feel comfortable with the brand and establish a level of trust. And I think trust is really key, especially with the senior audience. And initial contact is critical, whether it's, on the site or the call center. And outbound initiatives, I mean, we all know, right? Be persistent, be helpful, but try to avoid being annoying. So yeah, I think that that's really key, just establishing the trust.
And so, Danira, thank you, Karen. So, Danira, what percentage of the allocated budget do you tend to see in the Latino market? And I'm going to ask Karen the same thing, but what is the percentage of allocated budget for traditional versus digital marketing? And how have you seen that change especially over the last, 12 months?
Yeah. So again, the heavy weight is on linear TV. But the degree to which that has changed year over year has been exponential. So even though linear TV is still the lion's share, right? So instead of like maybe 90%, it's very quickly going down year over year. Right now, I would say that it's not just linear TV that's catching our attention. It's the streaming TV, the digital TV platforms, OTT, or connected TV, that we have our eye on. It's not that they're performing necessarily way better or even the same as linear TV, but we know that's changing, and it's changing quickly. The pandemic actually accelerated that change. We saw from the difference between 2019 and 2020 in terms of options available to us on connected TV and OTT. It was not even a percentage increase. It was like 2-3x in terms of platforms. But also on the digital side, we know that you can't do linear TV without supporting it on the digital side with search, with organic and paid. They work together. It's been, I can't even remember how long it's been since we just launched a TV campaign. It always has a digital component. So again, within the linear, there's now the digital TV platforms that we're looking at. And then when you launch linear, even if it's the majority of your spend, you need to, it's a given. You need to support it with digital platforms and digital mix. On the digital side, it's definitely search is what TV is what drives search, but we also see a growth year over year, and again exponential on the paid media, paid digital, that is growing significantly. And I expect that to happen again next year.
So Karen, you run a major English agency, media agency, and you do both digital and TV, and you have a lot of healthcare clients. What are you seeing out there?
I mean, Daenerys has nailed it, to be perfectly honest with you, you know, and especially with COVID, you know, we always almost always run a fully integrated program, and there are shifts, as we all know, especially from linear to CTV, and search, social, and digital are always a part of the media mix now. So I would probably say, you know, I know your second question, Firm, was, do you see a shift in the expenditure? And I would say it's probably, you know, whereas we would, before COVID, it was 85-90% TV, and we're probably, you know, downwards about 75 to 78 TV, and the remainder of it is split between all the digital channels. And, you know, as we know, everybody's testing their way into the OTTs now to, one, try to get into a less cluttered marketplace, and two, because that's where the audience segments are, and even with the senior segments, we're seeing more and more usage of it.
I think those percentage rates are about right, and the same on the Hispanic side. I mean, we were worried on the Hispanic side that, not worried, but we thought that OTT would be slow to have pickup because of content had to be in language for the programming and so forth. But it especially through the pandemic, the platforms were launching like crazy, and everybody was subscribing to it. Well, a lot of cord cutters. I think it was going to happen anyway, and I think we were all expecting it. But the acceleration of that year over year has been really not surprising because of the pandemic, but the pandemic definitely kind of put it out there. It forced us to say we have to be in this, and we have to be in feet first, or head first, I should say.
Absolutely, Janera. Yeah. So we've absolutely seen it accelerate. So Phyllis, how's the halo effect of linear TV advertising upon the digital sales funnel?
So I think it's funny. It depends who you ask, a TV or digital marketer, because there's no question that TV especially when you're on 250,000 times a year. You're driving web traffic, whether it's organic search, direct visits, paid, both non-branded and branded search. To what the ladies were saying before, I think what's really interesting is for a final expense product, let's just separate that out for a moment, you have to remember what that target demographic looks like. So they might be 45 to 50 to 60, but their household income's lower. So they may not be a traditional cord cutter, but Fern, to your earlier point, maybe their child gave them a Fire Stick, or they gave, there's some adoption of those alternate outside of linear TV in the household. But I think another interesting fact was in my past experience, you could almost be at 75% of those people coming to your website on a cell phone. So it's not exactly screen sharing, but kinda, you figure that audience, that's their main computer or their main access to the internet. So there's definitely a halo impact. It's easy to be measured. However, attribution, I'm sure, comes up in everybody's marketing conversations. How are you measuring that? I know my entire career I've spent arguing with the digital team that certainly nobody woke up and said, I'm just going to search for Colonial Penn today without seeing some other kind of marketing advert or asset. So attribution is a key in this conversation. But, I always used to kid, I'd be like, okay, let's see what TV halo looks like. Go off a TV and see what happens to your search. We all know they're hand in hand. So the idea is to use that consistent messaging, the phrasing across your assets, so that your DRTV asset isn't the same as your digital asset, but they support each other, and it's that omni-channel messaging so that they see it on TV and then they end up going online. They're seeing the same messaging and it's familiar. And so in my experience, you create these multiple assets so that you have your DRTV, you have your digital assets, but they work together. And the idea is to have that messaging throughout all of your marketing. Like as an example, the Alex Trebek or the Jonathan Lawson and the 995 plan. You see that everywhere. And so that's going back to that brand credibility, the trust, all of that comes into play as a marketer when you're trying to generate those leads. So there's definitely an impact, and it's how you can manage them together to really maximize your response.
Absolutely. Thank you. So Karen, what digital marketing tactics are you currently using with your clients, and where do you see the biggest growth potential over the next year, 3 years, 5 years?
So we run a mix of paid search, paid social, and programmatic digital. We've been increasing native placements as it drives much higher engagement, and that's one of the big things that we're seeing. It's less intrusive than display banners, and the creative variations allow for efficient testing, very efficient testing. And we've seen success with native when targeting direct to consumer as well as healthcare professionals. And so it's been one of our always on tactics for one of our other insurance clients for the past year. We use them to promote our clients' content and third-party content that's applicable to the client. Native offers really a large scale reach and high engagement rates and site visits. So you can always run multiple headlines to resonate with different consumers, which is great. And since there's only an image and a headline, there's really no production fee. So it makes it really, really efficient. Two other areas which we expect to see continued growth is in-app mobile advertising due to the increase in mobile usage and video. And while in-app impressions inventory is still growing, it allows targeting on device ID levels, which gives brands a much better understanding of who they are actually targeting. There's also something that we will be testing in 2022 with one of our healthcare clients. And a recent study from PulsePoint in the first half of 2021 stated Insight mobile impressions grew 33%, which is amazing, and app mobile impressions grew 65%. So we know that that's an area that we're going to continue to see growth in. And I would say from a video perspective, it not only helps build awareness, but it helps educate as well as establish an emotional connection or a relationship with the prospective customer. This allows for cross-platform exposure, in video, in read, native video, and CTV and OTT. So from a targeting perspective, the focus should be on first-party data and contextual targeting to ensure brands are really reaching qualified prospects once third-party cookies are no longer available. So that's kind of our overarching, kind of take on, where we think, what we're doing and where we think it's going.
Perfect. Thank you, Karen. And
You're
Danira,
welcome.
in the Latino market, what do we see?
Yeah. Well, Karen, that's a lot. I think I need to talk to you about everything you're doing. That's awesome. Well, from a campaign perspective, especially when it comes to life and Medicare, since the majority of our spend is on TV, we looked at ways to kind of make sure that the digital is leveraged in an omni-channel way. So, for example, just what Phyllis was talking about, search, we know, is driven by TV. Okay, so typically we put the URL on screen. Very rarely, or very small percentage of time, you go directly on your browser and put in the URL. You're usually going into some kind of search engine, and even if you put the brand name, you're usually going into some kind of search engine to do that. So we know that TV drives a lot of search. So we'll work with the digital teams and our clients' internal departments to say, look, we're doing this. We're doing local TV, for example. Maybe we could do some geo-targeting in that area. We have a brand ambassador. We got to make sure that brand ambassador is included some video content, influencer strategies within its contract. We want to make sure that the influencers that we pick have leverageability on the TV side and vice versa. So that's a big deal. We do run a gamut of digital tactics every single time, many of which Karen mentioned. What we are thinking about in terms of omni-channel is moving forward with tests around QR coding, especially on OTT platforms. Basically using a QR code as a call to action, for example. So that's, again, multi-channel type of tactics. We are testing also like text to call type of tactics. So the mobile versus linear TV or phone kind of tactics. So we also look at things like geo-targeting when it comes to, on the Hispanic side, when it comes to ethnic-based messaging. So when I say that within the Hispanic market, there are different kind of ethnicities or country of origins. So whereby certain regions of the country are more Mexican focused and other regions are more Caribbean focused, we may develop different messaging and geo-target that messaging, which is really great to do and easier to do, way easier to do on the digital platforms than it is on the TV platforms. So those kind of differences on the Hispanic side and more of a omni-channel campaign focus as well.
It's interesting you brought up QR codes because we knew that, it was dabbled like 5 years ago. They started dabbling. It was going to be the next great thing. And then all of a sudden it fell off the ledge. And then all of a sudden you're seeing it come back because
it's on again. Yeah.
Because of the pandemic, every restaurant you went in, anywhere you went, you had to put your phone up to get the menu because they did away without, the menu. So it's kind of interesting.
You're absolutely right. I think that nobody knew what to do with the QR codes before. But I am seeing it. It is something on our testing platform, but we're just from a regular consumer. I'm seeing it more and more on the OTT platforms more than anything.
Absolutely, totally agree. So Phyllis, how relevant are outlets like audio? So meaning radio, podcast, and then let's talk a little about print, direct mail. In other channels, we see YouTube is really very, very prevalent these days. So talk to us a little about that.
Sure. We talked a little bit earlier about media mix and how important it is depending on the target demographic, right? So lead diversification is where it's at. I worked for a publicly traded company for 15 years. There's some accounting practices related to DRTV and how we account for those costs. So it became critical to change your marketing strategy so that we could depend on other channels and be more efficient with our spend. But we know as performance-based marketers, like radio is something that I've used for my entire career, and it works. So it's really interesting that before there was a World Wide Web, we relied on direct response TV and direct mail. So times are changing, but those marketing channels are still very effective. So radio is an example, super successful with especially the older demographic. They actually still listen on a radio with dials and all in their house, and they actually call. So, we have the opportunity to get them over the air digitally, which again, with a lot of the consumers going online on their cell phone, it's really been a great channel for us to drive response and drive conversion. Radio, in my agency days, it was so easy to sell to clients because it delivers a high value and highly converting target. And that still holds true for us today. And I think that especially with the Alexas of the world in everybody's home, people are able to stream their favorite station even if they moved across the country. So I think that there's a tremendous amount of opportunity in audio, print, direct mail, like I said. So I have some 20-somethings. They love getting stuff in the mail. They may not buy it, but they open it. So I think that even for products like term insurance, the new generation, these millennials and anybody else that maybe we would consider like digital only play, direct mail is working in those target demos as well. We found, especially for final expense, we love the alternative media opportunity. So things like inserts or out of home even. It depends what the goals of the campaign are, but generally speaking, we've been as creative as we can to reach that target demographic, whatever, if it's a final expense play, if it's a term play or simplified issue play. We really are trying to get that messaging out there to cause somebody to take an action. It's kind of the old tried and true problem solution. And especially in print, you can do that. You can give them all the information, and the final expense, that target demographic, they love to read everything. So, I'm talking a lot about print. Obviously, there's email strategy as well, especially these days, the cost of postage, the supply chain issues, all the economic factors that impact those channels. But I think when managed very tightly and efficiently, can be very not expensive. Well, I guess they are expensive, but very effective. And I think that I found great success in those channels, and they really live and breathe the tenets of direct marketing. Some old, some new, but they definitely can be successful.
Perfect. Thank you, Phyllis. So Karen, I know you and your team do a lot of out of home, and you do a lot of podcasts. Are these standalones? Do you see return on investment in these, or do you see it more part of the multi-channel play?
Well, it's really part of the multi-channel play, Fern, but it all does lead into when you utilize them, kind of into generating efficiencies, right? Because we've been using out of home, and we've seen it out of home specifically for one of our healthcare or insurance clients, Access Health, and we basically surround the consumer. And so since they're local to Connecticut, we really strategically select out-of-home locations so that we know we can intercept them where they live, where they work. And it just enhances, because we do a fully integrated campaign for them, from TV to radio to podcasts to, print, door hangers, you name it. We canvas everything with them. And it truly, you need it to really engage these customers. And we do, the podcasts are actually increasing in both English and Spanish speaking against this client as well. And we can specifically target by utilizing the podcast in language. So it's really great. So the listenership is up so high. And when you tie that in with, with the live read on it, it's just, they have tremendous followers. And so it's just, the engagement is tremendously high. And, we're also doing a lot with spot radio. And we use both terrestrial by language, and streaming to reach these key segments, whether they're listening at home or whether they're on the go. And so, and we're also including language newspapers that allows us, especially with the senior audience, one-to-one. So again, it goes back to what we've all been saying, the surround sound and making sure that you're reaching your potential customers at any given time when they want to receive the information, because we know TV will do what we need it to do, especially with the senior audience as well as with the younger audiences, but we have to make sure that we engage them strategically where, when, and how they want to use it. So I think our jobs as media people have become extremely complex, not only in terms of the appropriate media mix, but also in terms of how we actually read it to help our clients understand better how and where they should invest, and how much they need to invest, not only in a portion of the budget that will kind of generate enough awareness while simultaneously making it pay off when we look at their allowables. So I think that's our biggest challenge these days.
And so, Danira, the Latino market, does it follow the English market? Are we seeing podcasts? Are we seeing out of home radio?
For the most part. The difference is really that, so let's talk radio, for example. The radio is, Hispanics are over-indexed in their use of radio, and how much they, in terms of their listening hours per week. So it's a great channel to reach them. However, the other part to that is that relative to the general market, there's extremely limited options in terms of national syndicated radio. So what you basically get down to is the use of radio when you want to use local tactics, local strategies. Radio becomes a bigger part of the mix, and that's on the terrestrial side. The digital audio is becoming bigger and bigger. We are testing podcasting and digital platforms a lot. They haven't performed at the level for us that terrestrial radio does, but that does give us the kind of the mass audience that we're looking for on the audio side. So that's one side. The out of home, it plays the same way. Very local strategies, and what we find is that as it relates to Medicare, for example, the local players, which there are lots, especially for the large Hispanic dense cities and DMAs. There are a lot of local players. The integrated systems that are offering Medicare programs and Medicare Advantage programs, plus the carriers, the branded carriers, use a lot of out of home on the local level. We do find it challenging when you do type of more generic based targeting, or trying to, like, for example, in open enrollment periods, trying to reach mass audiences. We do find it challenging to play at the local level. But I think from a consistency, being present, and when you want to execute on very strong local strategies, radio and out of home is where to go, at least on the Hispanic side, in complement to your TV. So.
Absolutely, complement. That's the whole omni-channel mix. It's all about the marketing pie. So Phyllis, how often do you touch your consumer for nurturing and remarketing strategy? You promised you were going to talk a little about nurturing and remarketing. Now's your chance.
Absolutely, absolutely. So in my experience, especially at Colonial Penn, we had what we called prospect reactivation and customer upgrade campaigns. So the idea is whether they come in and speak to an agent on the phone, or they go online and chat, or even no interaction with any agent, is to reach them quickly if they have not converted. So when we talk about these campaigns, generally I'm speaking about the print campaigns and direct mail in particular. So what's interesting is I was at Colonial Penn a long time. So as new marketers would come in, they'd be like, oh, is this the buy or die strategy? So kind of. So really, I'll get into some of this, but when you're talking about the money that you've spent for those TV leads, which are not cheap, why not maximize the efficiency of those spends that you've already incurred and mail these prospects that have not converted? So we're talking about prospect reactivation. You already have a hand raiser. You're sending them an information packet, probably after you got off the phone with them if they did not convert. So the key is to get back to them quickly while that message is still fresh. We need to understand what prevented them from buying in the first place and why would they want to buy now. So it's really all in your messaging. So the idea is how often, right? So typically there's a rhythm. It could be quarterly. Some people do monthly. I found more success with a quarterly mailing. Again, buy or die, you don't want to reach them so much that they just it's too much noise and they shut you out. So the idea is get your timing to be kind of very fluid, and your messaging is really important. So they were interested and they didn't buy. There's going to be something that triggers them along the way. Do they see the commercial a week later and say, oh, by the way, I heard somebody passed away. Now it's time for me to buy. So the idea is to be reaching them when they get to that point. So you're already in front of them or you were just in front of them. The idea is using email, right? It's kind of free, rather than direct mail. But
quick question on that. So do you actually stay within the genre? So in other words, your telco person, you're doing direct mail back to your callbacks, okay? But for the consumer who comes into online and doesn't fill out the application, do you then only reach back to them through direct, through email?
We actually had a multi-pronged strategy. So a lot of the target demographic wouldn't provide their email. So when we had their email, we would be back in touch with a remarketing strategy with that audience. For those that didn't provide that, and we did have a mail address, we would mail them something. And I think in a lot of times it can feel impulsive. Let me go online and try something, but as we would send that information out, really a fulfillment kit or an information kit would give them all of the information they needed so that when they were ready to make that decision, they could do that. I think it's important to understand what that strategy is because you want to convert the hand raisers to be a customer, but then you also want to look at your customers a little bit differently. So now you've converted this person, they're a policy holder. What's your onboarding strategy and welcome look like? I mentioned that a little bit earlier, but you also want to be in touch with them for upgrades. Is it their birthday? Send them a birthday card. Give them some personal information. The key, particularly with final expenses, you don't want to upgrade your customers too often because it is a share of wallet product. It's a downscale consumer. I mean, you're talking about term or some other type of insurance product, but for final expense in particular, it's a fine balance. So you want to be in touch, you want to be there, you want them to know customer service is available for them, and you would like to upgrade them so that the policy value gets higher. But as we talked about with persistency, you don't want to upgrade them too much. They won't be able to afford it, and then they lapse. So it's really a good balance, understanding your messaging, your timing, and really each campaign varies. So I can't say everything should be quarterly, but in general, what we found is for customers, it's a quarterly mailing. And then perhaps around their birthday, they get some kind of a special mailing. Again, this is really for persistency. And then ensuring that customer experience along the way, even if they can't afford it today, maybe again, there's a trigger that something happens in their life and they're like, I really need to increase my life insurance. I think testing, we talk about the tenets of direct response and performance management. Testing messaging is really important, not only for the fluffy stuff, but also those offers. Do you upgrade one 1,000 or a unit or a face amount offer, or that's really important to set up that testing and to read it. So I would say that they're really the most important aspects when you're talking about nurturing. Again, no one answer, one size fits all, but I think that when you're talking about direct mail, it's important to get real flat on that real fast because it is expensive. When it comes to that digital remarketing, again, very, very important to get those customers, meet them where they are. They responded, they purchased, they interacted online. Are they the right person for a direct mail kit? Probably not, but You work with what you have. We also found very successful for those people that visited online but did not convert. They didn't fill out the form. They didn't complete the application. We use direct mail remarketing. So there's a postcard in their mailbox within 48 hours, driving them back online to finish that conversion. So very successful in that campaign, especially and even with the final expense, but also with the other types of insurance.
Thank you, Phyllis. Very interesting. So, Danira,
That's great stuff. Phyllis, it's a lot of good stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely. So this is getting into now how we're growing, how we're opening the funnel, what's next in our world. And so we're hearing more and more how TV outlets are going to require a combination of spend across linear and CTV. We're especially hearing it on the English side. And I'll get to Karen in a second, but are we hearing it on the Spanish side that they're going to require both?
Oh yeah, 100%, absolutely. This year, for the first year when we went in to negotiating large quarterly lock-in budgets, this year for the first year on the broadcast side, as part of the packages that were requiring some OTT spend on our part, because most all of the bigger stations are launching OTT platforms for their content, and they're trying to build that out too. So they're negotiating with us in a way that, because linear is still the lion's share, right? They're negotiating with us in a way that kind of forces our hand to test more on OTT. And it was the first year that we had a heavy push, and it was I wouldn't say a requirement, but part of the negotiations that we buy OTT with linear, and the cord cutting is happening at a very high rate on the Hispanic side, extremely high rate, and it goes hand in hand with what platforms are available to them. And there have been an incredible amount of Spanish only platforms, either digital only or big broadcasts like the Telemundos and the Univisions of the world, offering OTT alternatives. So I expect it to be more and more part of our mix. Again, it's still a small part, and we're still testing it out, getting it to work at the same level that TV does, linear TV. But I expect it to be there more and more year over year.
Karen, so how do you foresee marketers pivoting should CTV become part of pie in 2022? And especially, how is it going to change the opportunities relative to the already congested linear media landscape?
So I mean, I think I agree with Danira. I mean, like we saw this happening in 2021 as well, with several media partners, absolutely requiring that fixed inventory must have a certain percentage of the spend against CTV, right? So they're parallel, right? So the preliminary feedback for 2022 is that it will be even more prevalent, and it will migrate into the DR and hybrid spaces even more, hybrid clients even more, that are looking to secure fixed media at the scatter level. So brands, I think, will need to get ahead of this from an integration and from a tracking and creative perspective, because I think that's going to be really imperative. Marketers will need, I think, to ensure positive and actionable user experience on the brand sites to move the prospects through the funnel, or to provide consumers the option to call or chat. And I think that's going to be really important, because especially with the seniors segment, should that be each segment's preferred mode of communication. Also, there's going to be a need to further collaborate between the internal marketing teams and agencies to ensure that the proper tracking is established, right? So also it will be imperative to establish realistic goals for this to help determine the value of CTV, right? Because that's going to be what impacts all the other channels. So I mean, these are all challenges as this becomes more prevalent within the buys. And CTV will provide a less cluttered environment specifically for MA advertisers, right? But how the older segment's still a smaller percentage of CTV users, but we will need to watch these channels really carefully, as it could become cluttered as more brands migrate and test the tactic. I don't think that's going to happen in 2022, and CTV definitely will not provide the relief that that we need to declutter the linear networks unless the older audience adapts and adapts really quickly. So I don't think we're in any risk burn of seeing that happen in 2022. But I think ultimately we will start to see that perhaps it will clutter, but I don't think it will declutter the linear market anytime soon.
And neither do we want it to necessarily, okay? Because honestly, the OTT, it's great in terms of being able to change quickly and being very targeted, but it's really, really challenging. We're challenged already on the attribution side. It's so challenging. You can't, it's very difficult to track an OTT. You can't an OTT specific airing like you can on linear, like where or you could, it's easy with the spike in calls at a particular airing. Digital and OTT is pretty much run by a target audience and it's user generated when they see it. Very difficult to do attribution. And so just from a selfish standpoint, I just find that, linear still reaches the mass audience when you want it to be reached. And it's easier to track, but we don't determine that. The market determines where we should be advertising, right? But from a media standpoint, media buyer standpoint, very selfishly, the TV does provide the mass market, and it's a believe it or not, more measurable from an attribution standpoint.
Perfect, thank you. So before we start hearing questions from our audience, one last thing. So Phyllis, tell us, what's the secret sauce for success? Come on, give me one or two lines, and I'm going to have to say from Danira and Karen.
Okay, so I think that there are, if I had to boil it down, because I did think about this a little bit, I'm going to say there are 5 tenets. Secret sauce in my career: know your customer, know your product inside and out, understand the data and the attribution for your marketing campaigns, go with your gut, and always laugh. The laughter part came from, again, my favorite human, Alex Trebek, who could always laugh at himself. And we often talked about it. And, we know the fail rate in this business with DRTV commercials, with assets. There's a high fail rate on some of these projects. And so the successes and the failures teach us as much. Each teaches just as much. So the idea is, when you feel like crying, just laugh. It's better to enjoy the journey. So they're really the 5 things that I think have made my whole career and everything we do in performance-based marketing really the secret, my recipe for success.
Love it, Phyllis. Absolutely fantastic. Karen, give me your secret sauce.
It's kind of close, and Phyllis, we could absolutely have fun working together, because I tell everybody that works with me, we're not doing brain surgery here, and if we're not having fun, then why are we doing it? So, I think that's really important. So I think, Phyllis, we should work really closely together. Anyway, my secret sauce. I think the secret sauce for success is and has always been very similar. Talk to your customers where, when, and how they want to be communicated with. This requires us as marketers to use our data and insights wisely to impact our media mix selection, our messaging, and our offers, stay flexible, and be able to pivot quickly and easily from channel to channel to ensure our clients' goals are being met and their dollars, are being spent as effectively and efficiently as possible. We always say we spend our clients' dollars like they're our own, and it goes a long way for me and for us, and because if you don't, you're not going to be as successful as you could be. So those are my secret sauces for success.
Fantastic, Karen. And Danira?
Yeah, I can't beat those 2. I just can't. I can't beat them. I can't. But I do have to say, I can't. But I agree. Okay, I could say that. But I do have to say, just like both my esteemed panelists have said, like you have to laugh and be able to have a passion and interest and have fun with this, because you are going to fail. You need, when anybody in performance-based marketing, anybody in D2C, anybody who's out there and doing as much as they can, you will fail. You need a thick skin, and you need to be resilient, and you need to fail, because if you're not failing, you're not doing your job. And what I, of course, the product and the customer, it becomes number one. But what from a media buying, media optimization, from a marketing person all my life, I have to tell you, your ability to be agile and resilient is number one. These days, the ability to be agile is highly dependent on your access to data mining, technology, and software that allows you to get real-time data and pivot as quickly as possible. So that's what I would say.
I would say that I am so aligned with my three panelists who I've known for a very, very long time, and I so appreciate your time today. We're going to have the voice of God throw us some questions right now, audience, so please send them over, and we're interested in helping and answering anything else we can do.
Thanks, team. Really great stuff. Drew some questions in, and I'm just going to see how many we can get through here over the next few minutes. First one, and I think this was Karen, if I'm remembering correctly, it came in early on. You mentioned mobile app advertising. What are you doing about attribution with Apple taking that away from iPhones?
Well, that's going to be an extremely challenging situation for that, and I will defer to my social director to help us with that question. But we can get back to you with that answer.
Great. For Danira, two key differences in the media mix when marketing in Spanish language versus English language television to your Hispanic market.
In terms of the media mix, I do think I do think they're a little bit more Hispanics tend to like talking on the phone more. So even if they go on digital and read up, you need to have that content out there. They are more likely to just get on the phone and call whatever number you either have on the website or they put on. So that personal touch is higher. We do see a higher conversion rates on the Spanish side when we do have Spanish-speaking agents. And that's really, really important, not putting them through a triage, even that, press 2 for Spanish kind of thing. Going directly to a Spanish-speaking agent is really, really, really important. And then I think we've been utilizing brand ambassadors. Phyllis started out saying that in the insurance world, trust is really big. You are committing yourself into a relationship with this company, with insurance, so trust is really big. And what we found is that there's typically higher conversion rates and higher response rates with a brand ambassador that's trusted within the Hispanic market. So not, for example, Alex Trebek dubbed over, but someone within the Hispanic market that's well liked and well trusted, typically an older person that can appeal multi-generational, because the other big difference is that Hispanics typically at a higher index live in multi-generational households, so the adult children get very much involved in decision making. So whatever messaging and brand celebrities you have in place should appeal to multiple generations. Hope that helps.
Great answer. This one's kind of out there, I think, for anyone to take first. This could definitely be a roundtable. With regard to the Medicare Advantage market, call now to get your free information kit seems like a very typical offer. 2 questions. Do you find that the web response is quite a bit lower than phone calls? And 2, how can you optimize the online traffic and conversions?
Those are a couple different questions. I'm going to jump in. So one is, we've all tested the package for MA, for Medicare Advantage, over and over again. We have not been able to make it work. Brand has a tendency to make it work a little better than non-branded because they're not looking for the same initial front-end ROI. They have more patience to go longer out because they have more product funnel to fill, and they want to really build their brand. So, that's the first part of the answer. I don't know if anyone else wants to jump in.
No? Anything else there, guys? If not, we can slide on to a question for Phyllis. Since you started at Colonial Penn to now, what's the single biggest change you've seen in how a winning campaign works?
Good question.
It's a great question. I think the answer is not simple. So Colonial Penn, right, we all know they go out with a $9.95 play. In my experience, Colonial Penn was never competitive on price. So when you think about the leads that we generated and the sales that we made without being competitive on price, you kind of it blows your mind. So I think what's really changed is understanding how, even with boomers aging in, they're not always that target demographic. So how you're speaking to your customer related to that $9.95, because it's still less than $10, right? $9.95 a month gets you some insurance. And I think understanding that everybody should have some life insurance. It's not legacy. You're not leaving $1 million, but you're leaving something for your loved ones. You're providing peace of mind. So understanding how to communicate that feature and benefit of the product across, from when we started, it was really just on TV and direct mail. Now it's communicating that on the digital platforms and channels with a little bit of a more savvy audience, but it still matters. And I think that that's really been what's been most interesting and effective, is that messaging and making sure that really that omni-channel approach is there. It works on TV. We've proved it over and over. But how to change that and make it more current for all the online channels. And I think that that's really been the most interesting dynamic that we've seen. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But like De Niro was saying, fail fast and move on.
Yeah, I think actually it's a great way to end the conversation would be to hear from each of you on that question, really. Like, what's the biggest change that you've seen since you've been working on insurance campaigns?
I mean, for me, it's the media mix has changed dramatically in terms of what you need to actually put out there in order to gain, not only, I think with insurance, there has to be some form of brand building and awareness to elicit that trust. And, it's important because most of our clients are driven by metrics. So we have to make the dollars that we're spending do both. And it's really an art, I think, as all of us know, to kind of balance what we like to call brand response, which is everything we do has to weigh towards your bottom line. So I would say that the biggest thing is that the media mix has changed dramatically. And knowing the nuances of and balancing out all of the different channels really takes it's an art, and it's understanding your primary target segments, and also understanding the influencers that impact your target segments, and making sure that your messages resonate and that your media placements are very targeted and in the right place to really make the kind of impact that they have to do. So it all lends itself to an effective and an efficient campaign that delivers on our clients' KPIs.
Absolutely. And I think you have to be channel agnostic. I think that, people who are afraid to test are going to fail, and they're going to fail very quickly. You can't just be in one channel now. As we talked about YouTube, 2 years ago, nobody would have even gone to test on YouTube. Now it's so relevant. When social first started, when email first started, when direct, it's always being open to testing. And it's got to be a consistent layer, and it has to be literally at least 15 to 20% of your entire budget. If you're not testing, you're going to wither on the vine.
So I would just add to 100%, the channel mix has changed dramatically, and it's particularly in the past few years. And because of that, what I would add is the importance of attribution modeling is becoming front and center right now, because of the being channel agnostic. means that you still, it doesn't take away from the fact that you still need to measure everything you do. It just becomes more difficult. So the attribution modeling. And then, you know, very selfishly, because I'm in the space, I do see more and more focus on the Hispanic market because of the growth of the demographic in this country and the share of wallet that they have. I do see more and more kind of interest in building that market out because it's something that I think more and more marketers and even carriers are realizing that you can't avoid if you want to see growth. So that's where I am.
Great, great, great. I'm gonna pop back on here and wrap things up. Fern, any last words before we go into wrap up?
Just thankful. I'm so glad that the audience hopefully has gotten a lot of takeaway. 3 great panelists. So appreciate your time and effort, and it's fantastic, team.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. Really well done, everybody. Danira, Fern, Phyllis, Karen, just reading your names in order that I see them on the screen. Thank you all so much, and thank you for the Workshop Council for bringing us the event today. If you're a PDMI member, would like to get involved in a council, you can reach out to me directly to share your interest. If you're not a member, join and we'll get you involved. Your next opportunity to attend a PDMI event live online is next year. Wednesday, January 5th, 2022, as we kick off another year of the PDMI's Take 20, our 20-minute bi-monthly webinar series created by the Brand Response Council. Visit thepdmi.com/take-20 to register now. And keep your eyes out for the announcement of speakers and your opportunity to register for our second Winter Seminar Series event, Fearless Predictions for 2022, which will take place on Wednesday, January 12th. Thanks again for joining us today and throughout 21. Enjoy the rest of your day. Happy holidays and all the best for a tremendous new year. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks.